This is a very scary movie, and I don't mean that as in it's an actual scary movie. It's a scary movie to make for a lot of reasons, and that's kind of what's appealing about it. Is it's a creative challenge, bigger than I think any that I've ever been up against.
That's really what was exciting about it, is that it was a new genre for us to do, and so this film was just like, you know, I mean, it was so far afield from anything we'd done. There are parts of it that are really graphic, but it's really got a psychological undercurrent to it that I think is what makes it interesting.
This is really a tragedy, but it has some really creepy elements, and you do feel this sense of isolation and desperation and sadness, but you really also understand love and friendship and just trying to survive.
And in a weird way, there's a sort of an adventure movie that has this weird other character. That it's not a slasher horror movie, but it ends up by being somewhat in that department.
It's genre bending, and it's also it's not as straightforward as saying, you know, oh, there's you know, a killer or there's a villain. You know, the villain also almost becomes human nature.
It's not so much about the vine that overtakes us, it's about each other and how we go into our own worlds and how we just, in the end, I mean, I don't even know if we're even friends anymore. I don't know, you know?
But that is what's amazing, you know? These people that are all of a sudden put in this dire situation aren't really even best of friends, you know? So it's like, it's already not a strained relationship, but a relationship of sort of technicality, you know, because they're on vacation together and then they're forced to really deal with each other, you know?
One of the things that was so interesting to me about the characters and what they go through and what they turn into is, I mean, they start as these sort of gorgeous, sexy, very normal, very real kids. And, you know, by the end of the film, they've turned into monsters. The physical transformation, you know, was something that I was really interested in. And in a weird way, you know, they're just as, you know, sexy, you know, which is perverse and, you know, sort of unsettling, hopefully, if it works.
Again, it was an incredibly scary endeavor because the only other movie that came close to this was Little Shop of Horrors. So typically movies about man-eating plants tend to be campy and silly. So I guess we have an opportunity there to make something original and different. And again, getting the right director was a crucial piece of the puzzle. You
know, I was about to go on vacation, it was August, and the book had just come out, and it was my vacation book. The day before I was leaving, my agent called me and said, there's this project at DreamWorks, it's this thing called The Ruins. And I was like, the Scott Smith book. And I was 30 pages into the book, I was like, I love it. So, you know, it was sort of a funny coincidence.
Well, you know, at Red Hour, we like to work with first-time directors. I think I don't know how many we've done, but most of our movies seem to be with first-time directors. And a lot of that just comes out of finding somebody who you think is talented. And, you know, Carter's a really accomplished photographer, and he has an incredible visual sense, and Steven Spielberg had seen Bug Crush, which is the short that Carter did, and said you should check out this guy.
Bug Crush is an extremely disturbing, kind of realistic horror film done by a first-time director, Carter Smith. And the more we talked about what tone we wanted The Ruins to have, the more we began to reference Bug Crush.
There haven't been very many films in a long time that scared me, and I'm a huge genre fan, so I mean I'm hard to please. And you know, there was something very raw and, I mean, violent and emotional and, you know, all of the stuff that sort of horror films had seemed to have left behind for a while.
It's okay.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
Just a little step to your left.
What interested us in The Ruins, initially, Scott Smith sent us the first 3 chapters of the book and an outline of what the rest of the book would be. And we actually purchased it before it was published. We obviously liked the book a lot, and then wanted Scott to write the screenplay.
And Scott is just such a, I just think he's one of the best writers out there, both screenwriter and novelist. In the script, he was able to sort of take the book and take the elements that he, you know, that were great about the book, but then create a compelling story.
There was a lot of stuff that was in the script that, you know, it was almost in a way shorthand. Even working with the cast, because they all read the book. I mean, in rehearsals and when we were workshopping and just kind of improvising stuff, you know, stuff from the book would come up, and even if it didn't, you know, make it into, you know, dialogue that's spoken on screen, you know, all of the performances are really sort of informed by the book.
My character, Stacy, in the movie ends up cutting herself and being obsessed with this vine, but in the book, Eric is the one who becomes obsessed and infatuated with this thing. So I read the book and I took little tidbits for Stacy, but I also took things from Eric's character as well. And we kind of made it our own too.
I looked at the novel until I realized that it wasn't Matthias who broke his, you know, did the whole thing. So it's strange. It's like looking at reading the book or the movie, and my text is the script. And because it changes a lot, I have to work from the script.
You know, what Carter and kind of the whole production has done such a remarkable job of is given us the environment in which to kind of allow those little magical moments.
You run as fast as you can, okay?
I mean, putting the team together was such a pleasure, because I mean, you know, there was resistance from a lot of people at first. Just, oh, it's a horror movie, you know. I don't know if I want to do a horror movie, but I think, you know, in a way that was great, because that got rid of everyone that shouldn't have be doing the film.
My name is Darius Konji. I'm a cinematographer on this film, The Ruins. I was laughing with Carter all the time because he's a photographer also.
It's something that I've been doing every day for, you know, 13, 14 years as a photographer. So, I mean, you know, I'm, you know, framing up shots all day, every day. I'm very used to just saying, no, you know, the camera should be here and a little lower, and, you know, maybe this lens. I mean, it's something that it's just a language that I'm sort of used to speaking. So, and what's great about, you know, a DP like Darius is he's, you know, completely open to it, and it's all about collaboration and you know, and sort of, you know, finding it together.
I always photograph very, very pretty, natural, but very beautiful. And I always take care of actors, actresses, make them look beautiful and all that. And suddenly, for the first time, I really wanted to not make them look beautiful, really go for the gritty look.
We had worked together before, and there was something to him, I think, about shooting a really horrific film in broad daylight. You know, that you know, is something that he hadn't seen before, and, you know, I haven't seen before, and, you know, it's a challenge. I mean, how do you make this stuff really frightening and scary, you know, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, front lit?
We're talking really from the beginning about shooting as much as possible with natural light and shooting with real locations and not recreating everything digitally.
We're not diffusing the light, and we're not, you know, I mean, it's harsh, you know, and it's, you know, it's harsh visually, and it's harsh emotionally, and it's, you know, there's a lot of elements to it. I think that there's something nice about, you know, letting someone else frame something and seeing how, and seeing how it looks, because I'm not always right, and then saying like, that's perfect. I would have never framed it like that myself, and and now we have that beautiful shot because you framed it,
We are in sunny Australia.
One of the challenges of this movie was finding the perfect location to build our hill. So to avoid being on stage, because we could have just built this hill, let's say on stage, and put blue screen all around the hill, and it could have been a completely digital background. But in that case, then your actors really would be almost too comfortable.
This story too has a lot of elements, natural elements. It's all about sweating and feeling that heat, and not being able to have water, and like all those things are made that much more real when the sun's beating down on you for 8 hours.
I mean, when you're up on top of a hill in the middle of nowhere, that reads for the audience. It just feels much more real.
One benefit to being at really one location is that you know exactly where the light is good at which time of day, and you know exactly where you can start, and you know exactly where you end up, and I mean, it's a very precise schedule. The challenges are probably pretty obvious here at like 2:30 as we're sitting here. Like basically the sun has gone down behind the mountain, and our day of daylight shooting is done. There's something so pressing about the sun slipping behind a mountain that that forces you to make quick decisions, and for everyone to really be on their game.
The downfalls are it's freezing cold. It's hard to get out there. It's hard to get equipment out there. It's like in the sun. There's no shade. There's nothing. It's very exposed. It's very extreme. But all of that, works and feeds into the stories and the inner life of all the characters.
It's so beautiful, but it's freezing cold. And it's supposed to be hot in summer and sweaty, so they have us in these little tank tops and freezing, so they'll come and spritz, the spritzer, and olive oil, which is probably here, a lot of, and so that gets a little uncomfortable, but I mean, I'd rather be outside in the beautiful environment and have them spritz me freezing to death than in a dusty studio, not real place.
For the tone of the film that we all wanted, I really, there was no way to shoot this on a stage. I just don't think if it was lit, it would be a completely different film. And it might have been a great film, but it wasn't the film that I was, interested in making.
It is intense. Like you walk away from that movie like really like wow, like you went through an experience.
The film is a nightmare, and it's a nightmare about things getting worse and worse and worse, and it really is an unrelenting downward slide.
I don't think that there's any stigma to to horror films. I mean, some other people have been like, is that a horror? How about a thriller? I'm like, I call it what you want to. I mean, it's it's a scary film, that will, that's gross and that's scary and that's tense and that's real, and I don't have any problems calling it a horror film.
The big challenge in this is, okay, daylight. You can see everything. How do you make the enemy scary, and really the way to do that is the enemy is scary if the enemy keeps on winning.
A Killer Vine book is one thing. When you pick up a book, it's like a willing suspension of disbelief, and you're taken along for the ride. I think that film audiences are more likely to judge and to question and to sort of challenge in a way. So I think that we sort of came up with a version of this vine that is based very much in the real world.
it's based in reality. There are plants, there are animals that mimic and that are flesh-eating and that, you know, move slowly and track and are attracted to blood and like all these things.
If you don't believe the vines, then you don't believe the story. I mean, it's absolutely paramount importance to us that people accept the fact that these vines are what they are. The vine itself is able to be picked up on their clothes and on their skin and things like that. So what actually is it? So we had to sort of create this, in a way, sort of create a backstory about how the vines actually interact with the humans and how they get inside their bodies and how they rot their clothes away and rot the tents away and all this sort of stuff. So, I mean, all that was, we had to sort of talk through and workshop all those sorts of things that the vine actually does to people.
We spent a lot of time figuring out, like, okay, well, how does it do this? And, you know, where does it get its nutrients from? I mean, all of these questions, you know, almost approaching it from a scientific, botanical, you know, perspective.
It was always really a matter of creating these practical vines. A proportion of them, when we get closer to camera, are our handmade ones. So we have a workshop of about 12 people who hand make every single leaf and hand paint and hand flock and hand cast and assemble every single vine leaf that we see close up.
My name's Gary Cameron. I'm the head vine maker, which is an unusual title, not had that one before. We've looked at lots and lots and lots of plants in the last couple of months. We've ended up very much using the pumpkin vine. This is what we call the mature tendril, this section here, which has all the stems coming off it. Each stem will either have a leaf or a flower and a new tendril growing off it, which is very important in this production because it's always growing.
It ends up actually like growing onto their arms and growing into their cuts and their legs and growing into their mouths and their nostrils and things like that. So the end tendrils themselves, we had to focus in on the design of those things and how they actually physically worked.
The whole point with this, it was not supposed to look like a mean plant. You were not worried about it. It was like a pumpkin vine. And when they first are introduced to the vine, they just climb into it and tear it apart. This was a very early mock-up we did, which was too severe. We went a fair way down the track with this, and then it was decided that, no, it did look too scary, and we turned right back to essentially the pumpkin vine. Through doing lots of camera tests, we discovered that the leaf wasn't looking real because it had so much texture on it. It was looking more reptilian. And this one is an earlier one. It's very rubbery, it's very heavy. And we've actually just kept developing until we got the thickness of the leaf down to, was 0.2 of a millimetre. They're very light and they move in the wind. And when you brush against them, they're quite natural. So if you look at a tree, all the leaves on it, when the sun hits it, it actually glows from within. It's actually got a reflective nature. And they're actually quite translucent.
CGI does play a little bit of a role in these vines, you know, particularly when they're animated and they're actually doing things.
We'll be adding a lot of things based on the way the actors perform, and then you get that magic moment, you know, where just the slightest little startle, or if we're going to put somebody in a cave and they want to be hit, you know, attacked a little bit or grabbed by a vine, we'll try to surprise them a little, you know, we'll poke them with a stick, so to speak, so that they can actually show a tad more surprise than they normally would.
Pretty much all of this violence is stuff that comes out of people trying to help each other, you know, and it's you know, almost nothing is being done against someone's will. You know, I mean, there's this stuff that happens in the story, and it's, you know, it's like, okay, we need to do this.
Cuts them off.
And, you know, do you want us to do this? Yes, I want you to do this.
Cuts them off.
You know, it's sort of these decisions that get made that just constantly send these characters, you know, deeper and deeper into, you know, a bad place.
There was much debate whether to go practical or visual effects when it came to the prosthetic work. And there's a little bit of a mix of it on this, but really for the most part, Carter really wanted it to feel visceral and to feel scary, and really wanted to go practical when absolutely ever possible. We have this incredible special effects prosthetic artist that is local to Australia by the name of Jason Baird. Nasty, 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 and you could tell he just loves his job.
Tus tráilers, visita mi canal.
We went and got, real lumps of raw meat and just, watched how they moved and sagged and hit the ground. And then we've got to use, we start using all the chemicals and silicons and foams that we have, and mix and match and try and get them to mimic real life.
The classic was Jason came to show the legs to us at set, and they were in the back of his trunk. So he'd open up his trunk and there'd be 2 bloody stumps of legs in the back of his car. So I guess that's the way Jason rolls.
The prosthetics are incredibly gory, incredibly violent, incredibly real. This isn't lit with a candle or a shadows covering. I mean, you see every single aspect of these prosthetics, of these operations, of these, everything that we do. And it's in broad daylight, which almost makes it even creepier,
I mean, we photographed it, and I saw some cut pieces of the film, and there are scenes I just can't watch. I mean, I cannot watch the screen.
I literally have to go in there and pull vines off of these ropey, meaty, gelatinous bone material that's pumping blood, that smells like you've never smelled anything before.
Oh God, I don't wanna, it's so gross, oh God.
It's like, that's the type of thing, it's like if I had to do that CG, like I'd be like, I'd really have to dig deep somewhere to find something, and I'd have to watch films of lamb slaughter and all these weird things. But on this film, on The Ruins, I just show up.
Jeff, get your ass out here! We got some meat for the barbecue tonight, all right.
Stacy, the vines get inside her through her various cuts, and she eventually, loses her mind and has to, they start cutting the bits and pieces out of her. So we had puppet legs for her left leg, which Jeff goes in and cuts out the vine out of her leg. And then he flips her over and cuts a huge piece of vine out of her back. The director really wanted us to, in one shot, cut and remove the vine from her leg and back. And it was like, well, normally, guys, you'd have a cut in there, you'd cut the reactions and cut back, and you'd have one for the cut, one set up just to cut the, to pull the vine out. And so they wanted it all in one hit. So we had to develop these legs and back pieces that you could literally cut, it would bleed properly, and you'd go inside and dig in there and remove a piece of vine out. And so spent a couple of months testing that stuff, and it really looked good.
It helped so much when I had all these prosthetics when I was cutting myself, and they had me on tubes, 3 different tubes attached to me all day with blood just pumping for each take. And for me, of course, it was so wonderful to have that there to react to as I'm digging in my thigh, and they allowed me to they put a little hole in there so I could really dig in there. That was totally helpful.
Stacey, come on.
Touch me!
I shouldn't pick my nose so much.
Look what happened.
Dimitri's death, when they blow his head off. It's going to be a lot of CGI, but they put actual pieces on his face and his head blown out. So when they turn it around on us and he's there with that, it's so much more of a reaction than if it's nothing there at all.
All the prosthetics in the sun was a treat. I just, you stay still, you get an itch. I had a mosquito bite me there, which obviously is a really wimpy thing to say, but in the middle of a shot, you're sort of...
I still remember reading the amputation scene and being like, this is something that I've never seen, and is and it's just harsh and gross, and it stuck with me.
People love it. People love the amputation scene. There's definitely audible reactions in the theater.
Matthias really isn't a great friend of theirs. They met him the day before, And so here they are, stuck in this situation. I can't believe that I'm gonna have to deal with the psychological aftermath of cutting off someone's legs that I don't really know.
This poor guy gets just bashed from head to toe from the start of the film. So we had to produce, obviously a realistic puppet from the waist down for the actor to blend onto him.
The legs are removable. You can take them off, and the groin area and the stomach is sort of almost like a jumpsuit. So you step into it like a leotard or something.
We built a platform with a hole in it and an angled ramp. And where the actor finishes, the puppet starts, and the rest of his body goes through a hole in the ground. So it's a very simple gag. It's been done to death, but it really worked.
Even to the stomach was a mold in my stomach, so the sight that you see every day looking down at your own stomach matched, and that was bizarre. And the hairs, the right length, the right color in your leg. I mean, it was extraordinary. But it was great. I'd get sort of phantom limb syndrome, where I'd be looking at my foot and I'd be trying to move my foot and it wouldn't move for a minute. And so if it's affecting you that way, then it's got to be good.
And then his individual legs are removable because we had so many multiples of legs to rip vines off, then legs to break, and then legs to cauterize, and that worked really well. It was just basically spritzed cooking oil onto the silicone and then hit that with a red hot frying pan, and it cooked up the silicone just like flesh. It smelt right too. So these legs here are the cauterized stumps after Jeff comes in and burns all the flesh after he's broken his legs. This is what the actor had attached to him. These legs were the initial reveal legs. These are rigged to bleed, so they've got blood lines coming through in and around the bones. We punched hairs on all of the legs, so they've got individual hairs punched throughout. We had a team of people punching away madly for a couple of weeks, because I think we had in total about 10 sets of legs for this effect. These legs are very heavy. It's like, and the silicone's very much oiled down. It's about oiled down at 150% or 120%. So they literally weigh as much as a real leg. It actually has that real heavy feel about it when they get thrown and dropped. The meat is very, very squashy. The dirtier and filthier and bloody they got, they just looked better and better. So it didn't matter how much filth we put on the legs, they just kept getting better looking.
And you can watch from the beginning of the take to the end of the take, just a close-up of the leg smashing, the sawing, the cauterizing of the wound, and it all looks real. I mean, these guys did an amazing job, and it's just so, it just feels real. You don't need to hide anything, you don't need to cover anything, it just is, it's happening.
I mean, as a director, what I hope to do with this film is to make a film that physically affects people. And if it makes you sink in your seat and squirm, great. If it makes you, look away and cringe or puke in the floor, great. I mean, as long as it's a film that people react to physically. There's very few types of films where you can really, sort of get that sort of physical response from people.
Stacey, give me that. Okay.